Let me ask you something strange. Think of the last time you really wanted something. Not needed, wanted. Maybe it was a promotion, a person, a number on a scale, a notification you kept checking for. Think about the feeling right before you got it. That hum, that pull, that low-grade electricity running just beneath your skin. Now think about the moment you actually got it. How long did that feeling last? For most people, honestly, for almost all people, the answer is not very long. A few hours, maybe a day. Then the wanting started again, quietly at first, then louder still. You told yourself it was ambition, drive, the healthy restlessness of a person who still has places to go. But what if it wasn't ambition at all? What if the wanting itself was the point? Picture a man named Rafe. He's 41, successful by most measures, perpetually half distracted. Every morning before his feet hit the floor, he reaches for his phone, not because he expects anything urgent, not because he has a reason. He reaches because something in him, something below conscious thought, has already decided the check is necessary. He looks, nothing important. He puts the phone down. 12 minutes later, he picks it up again. He will do this 40, maybe 50 times today. Each time a tiny flicker of anticipation. Each time a small flatness when the screen shows nothing new. And yet he continues. He is not weak. He is not broken. He is simply caught inside a loop that was never designed to stop. Rafe is not unusual. He is, in fact, a near-perfect demonstration of how motivation actually works, not as a ladder you climb toward satisfaction, but as a circuit that keeps you running in place, convinced the next loop will be the satisfying one. This is where we begin.
Most of us carry a fundamental misunderstanding about motivation. We treat it like a compass, something that points us towards what we want and quiets down once we arrive. Goal, effort, reward, rest. That's the story we tell ourselves. But the brain didn't get that memo. The system inside you that generates motivation, the dopaminergic system, the network of pathways radiating from the midbrain outward, is not a reward machine. This is one of the most important and most misunderstood findings in modern behavioral neuroscience. Research by Kent Berridge and Terry Robinson at the University of Michigan established that dopamine is not primarily the chemical of pleasure or reward receipt. It is more precisely the engine of wanting, of incentive salience, the motivational pull that orients you towards a target before you reach it. Their work, developed over decades and reaffirmed in a major review published in the Annual Review of Psychology in 2025, showed that when nearly all dopamine depleted in animal subjects, the capacity for liking, genuine hedonic pleasure, remained intact. What collapsed was the drive to pursue anything at all. Dopamine is not the feeling of having, it is the feeling of about to. Let that land for a moment.
This means the peak neurochemical experience of motivation, the rush, the drive, the aliveness, happens before you get what you want, not during, not after, before. The moment of receipt, the moment of achievement, can actually coincide with a drop in dopamine activity, which is why the trophy feels lighter than the chase, why the relationship, once secured, feels somehow less electric than it did when it was uncertain, why the salary increase is thrilling for about 2 weeks before your brain recalibrates and starts looking for the next rung. You were never designed to arrive. You were designed to pursue. And understanding this, really sitting with this, is the beginning of a very different relationship with your own wanting. Because here is the part most motivational frameworks skip entirely. The anticipation system doesn't just reward pursuit, it punishes stillness. When nothing is being chased, when no prediction is being formed, the system goes quiet, and that quiet feels like emptiness, like purposelessness, like something is wrong. So you reach for something to want, anything, a goal, a distraction, a minor grievance to nurse. You are not chasing because you need the thing. You are chasing because the chasing itself is keeping you neurochemically alive.
This is not a flaw. It was, for most of human history, precisely the right design. An ancestor who became fully satisfied after one meal would not last long in a world where the next meal was never guaranteed. The wanting was protective. The wanting kept you moving. But the environment changed faster than the brain did. Now we live in a world of abundant, engineered stimulation, platforms and products specifically designed to exploit the anticipation loop. Infinite scroll is not accidental. The variable reward schedule, sometimes there's something good, sometimes not, is the most powerful and extinction-resistant operant conditioning pattern identified by behavioral science. Established by B.F. Skinner and Charles Furster in their landmark 1957 research and confirmed across decades of subsequent study. It keeps the dopamine system firing because the uncertainty itself is stimulating. You are not addicted to your phone. You are addicted to the moment just before you know what's on it. This is the first thing you need to understand. The second is both stranger and more personal.
The anticipation engine doesn't just create wanting, it creates a kind of predictive map, a continuous, mostly unconscious calculation running in the background of everything you do. Your brain is not passively experiencing your life, it is constantly predicting what will happen next, then comparing that prediction to reality, then updating based on the gap. Neuroscientists call this prediction error. The foundational research here came from Wolfram Schultz, whose 1997 work demonstrated that dopamine neurons in the midbrain fire most strongly not at the moment of reward, but at the moment of a cue that predicts reward, and that when expected rewards fail to arrive, dopamine activity drops below its baseline. This reward prediction error framework has since been described as one of the great insights of computational neuroscience, extensively replicated and refined. A 2024 perspective in Nature Neuroscience from researchers at Harvard, Stanford, and other institutions confirmed that while the original model needs broadening, dopamine also signals prediction errors about non-reward events. The core finding remains robust. Dopamine encodes the gap between what was expected and what actually happened.
When reality is better than expected, dopamine spikes. When reality matches expectation, dopamine holds steady. But here's the thing, steady is not exciting. Steady doesn't drive behavior. Steady is invisible. When reality is worse than expected, when the thing you hoped for doesn't arrive, dopamine drops below baseline. And that drop is not neutral. It is experienced as loss, as deflation, sometimes as a kind of grief, even over small things. This is why achieving goals can kill motivation. Once you've gotten what you wanted, you've collapsed the uncertainty. Your brain knows exactly what this feels like now. There's no prediction error to chase anymore. The circuit goes quiet. The winner's trophy is also a prediction system shutdown notice. Which brings us to a question worth sitting with, and we'll return to it again deeper in this volume. What do you do when the system designed to drive you is also the one that makes achievement feel strangely hollow? That question doesn't have a quick answer, but it has a real one. And the path towards it starts with watching your own wanting, not to suppress it, but to understand what it's actually telling you. In the next section, we're going to go deeper into the architecture of motivation, why desire intensifies under uncertainty, how the loop of compulsive pursuit forms, and, crucially, what the difference is between wanting that's aligned with meaning and wanting that's simply filling a neurochemical gap. The distinction matters more than you might think, and it's one most people never learn to make.
Let's get specific about how the wanting system actually works, because the more precisely you understand it, the harder it is to be fooled by it. Your brain is running a continuous, real-time prediction model. At every moment, it's asking what is likely to happen next and what will it be worth. This isn't a metaphor. It's a computational description of what the midbrain dopamine system does. Dopamine neurons in the ventral tegmental area, a cluster of cells deep in the midbrain, encode what researchers call reward prediction error, the difference between the reward you expected and the reward you received. This signal was first identified by Schultz and colleagues, and causal evidence for it was confirmed in a 2020 study published in Nature Neuroscience using optogenetics to directly manipulate dopamine signals, demonstrating that the dopamine response to a reward predictive cue is a prediction error, not simply a signal about value. Here's what makes this strange and important.
The motivation
Isn't generated by what the thing actually delivers. It's generated by what the brain predicts it will deliver. And predictions are not always accurate. This is where your wanting can mislead you.
You've experienced this. You've wanted something intensely, pursued it for months, reorganized your life around it, and when it arrived, it delivered about 40% of what you expected. Not because the thing was bad, because your prediction was inflated. The brain had built a rich, detailed model of how good this would feel, and reality, which is always messier, always more specific, always more human, didn't match it. The prediction was better than the prize. And instead of updating permanently, instead of learning to want less intensely, you often move the prediction to the next thing, because the system's job is not to help you find contentment. Its job is to keep you moving. Priya had been working toward the director title for 3 years. She thought about it more than she thought about most things. In quiet moments, she'd imagine the email arriving, the congratulations from colleagues, the new weight of the title under her name. She'd feel something lift in her chest just thinking about it. The email came on a Tuesday. She read it 3 times, felt a warm surge, real, genuine, went to lunch with a friend and smiled all the way through. By Thursday, she was thinking about the VP role. She didn't question this. She told herself she was ambitious. She was. But ambition and compulsive prediction chasing can look identical from the inside. The difference is in what's driving them, meaning or mechanism. Priya's story is not a failure. It is a near-universal human experience, but it's one worth naming, because until you name it, you can't choose differently. When you last wanted something badly, not needed, wanted, where was the feeling actually coming from? From a reasoned judgment that this thing would genuinely improve your life? Or from the anticipation loop, running its familiar circuit, filling the space with hunger because hunger is what it knows how to make? You don't have to answer out loud, but sit with the question. Let it be uncomfortable for a moment. That discomfort is information. For the next 48 hours, try this. Every time you notice yourself wanting something, checking your phone, refreshing a page, imagining a future version of your life, pause for 3 seconds before acting. In those 3 seconds, ask only one question. Is this want pointing towards something meaningful, or is it filling a silence? You don't need to stop. You don't need to judge. Just notice. Noticing is the beginning of agency. Here is where it gets more personal and more uncomfortable. The brain's anticipation system doesn't just generate wanting, it generates specific types of wanting, shaped by your history, your early experiences with reward and disappointment, your learned associations between effort and outcome. And what this system marks as desirable is not always what you would consciously choose if you sat down and thought clearly about what actually matters to you. This is the misalignment problem. Put simply, what feels rewarding and what is actually meaningful are not always the same thing, and the brain, left unchecked, will optimize for the former. Dopamine doesn't care about your values. It cares about predicted reward, and predicted reward is trained by experience, not by reflection. If, early in your life, approval from authority figures was strongly associated with safety, your brain may spend decades optimizing for external validation, not because you need it, but because the system learned it works. Not because it aligns with who you want to be, but because it's what the prediction model knows. This is not weakness, it's wiring. But wiring that was useful then may not be useful now. Marcus has written 3 novels, none of them published. He tells everyone, himself included, that he writes because the work itself matters, because stories are how he thinks, because the act of making meaning on a page is its own reward. But watch him more closely. After every chapter, he emails a draft to a small list of trusted readers. He does not wait for their responses calmly. He checks his inbox. He checks it again. He reinterprets silences. He feels a specific deflation when the feedback is positive, but not enthusiastic enough. And he has noticed, though he has not told anyone, that on days when no one responds, the writing feels less alive, less real. The work is meaningful, that part is true, but the motivation system running beneath the work has quietly become dependent on external signal. The loop has attached itself to approval, not creation. Marcus is not shallow. He is caught in a misalignment between his conscious values, craft, meaning, truth, and the reward architecture his brain built while he wasn't paying attention.
The question this raises is not, how do I stop wanting approval? That's the wrong question. Wanting to matter to people is human and healthy and real. The better question is, when my wanting for approval starts to drive my behavior, when it begins to determine whether I create, whether I speak, whether I take a risk, have I handed over something I didn't mean to give away? Sit with that, because the answer isn't always no. Pick one area of your life where you're currently motivated, a project, a relationship, a goal. Write down, without editing yourself, 2 answers to this question. What does this pursuit feel like it's giving me? Then, what does it actually give me, measured against what I most value? If those 2 answers are close together, you're likely aligned. If they're far apart, you've just found something worth examining.
Now let's talk about the loops themselves, the patterns of behavior that feel like motivation but function more like compulsion. You know these loops. Everyone does. The late-night scrolling that was supposed to last 5 minutes, the obsessive tracking of a metric, weight, followers, steps, revenue, that has long since stopped being useful information and become ritual. The checking of a person's profile you told yourself you were done thinking about. These are not failures of willpower. They are the anticipation engine running without a meaningful target. The system generates wanting. There's nothing real to point it at, so it latches on to whatever is available, whatever has worked before, whatever offers the chemical whisper of maybe this time. The variable reward schedule, the not knowing whether something good is there, is precisely what keeps the loop alive. Research consistently confirms that variable ratio reinforcement, where rewards arrive after an unpredictable number of responses, produces the highest response rates and the strongest resistance to extinction of any known conditioning pattern. Certainty kills the dopamine response. Uncertainty feeds it.
So the scroll never ends because it's designed to never resolve. There is always one more post, always one more data point, always the possibility of something better just past the next swipe. And the brain, which was built for a world where uncertainty often meant opportunity, treats this engineered ambiguity as signal worth chasing. The loop isn't irrational. It's running exactly the program it was trained on. In a world of genuine scarcity and genuine surprise, this loop was protective. In a world of infinite synthetic novelty, it is a trap, not because you're weak, but because the trap was carefully engineered.
Teodora is a software developer, competent, thoughtful, generally satisfied with her work. But she has a habit she's noticed and can't quite name. She keeps adding metrics to her personal dashboard: steps, sleep scores, task completion rates, mood ratings. The dashboard has become elaborate. When she tracks a metric, she feels a mild pleasure, the sense of being in control, of having evidence that she is progressing. When she misses a day of tracking, she feels faintly anxious, as if something important has slipped past uncounted. She has started to notice that the tracking is sometimes more motivating than the behavior it tracks. She'll go for a walk specifically because she hasn't logged one yet, not because she needs or wants the walk. The metric has become the meaning. The map has eaten the territory. Teodora's situation is increasingly common in a world built around measurement and optimization. The loop of tracking, checking, updating, it mimics the structure of meaningful progress without necessarily delivering it. The question isn't whether tracking is bad. Often it's useful. The question is, who's in charge, you or the loop? Where in your life are you running a loop that you didn't consciously choose to start and that you're not sure how to consciously choose to stop? You don't need to dismantle it right now, but naming it, really seeing it clearly, without self-blame, is the first act of genuine agency. Choose one compulsive loop in your life, one behavior you return to repeatedly, not out of intention, but out of pull. For 3 days, don't try to stop it, just observe it. Notice, when does it start? What feeling preceded it? Boredom, anxiety, discomfort, quiet? What does it promise? What does it actually deliver? Map the loop before you try to escape it. You can't change what you haven't honestly seen.
We've talked about how the brain generates wanting, how it misfires, how it latches on to loops. Now let's talk about the one variable that changes everything: meaning. Not in the lofty, abstract sense, in the neurobiological sense. Research in this area is growing rapidly, and its findings are striking. A 2017 review published in Frontiers in Human Neuroscience, drawing on over 4 decades of self-determination theory research led by Edward Dickey and Richard Ryan, found that intrinsic motivation, behavior driven by genuine interest, values, and felt purpose rather than external reward, is associated with enhanced learning, performance, creativity, and psychological well-being. Crucially, converging neuroscience evidence points to the same dopaminergic systems underlying both intrinsic motivation and externally driven pursuit. The difference isn't the chemical, it's what the chemical is pointed at. This is what distinguishes ambition from compulsion. Ambition is wanting in the direction of meaning. Compulsion is wanting in the direction of the loop. They can look identical from the outside and sometimes from the inside, but they feel different over time. Ambition, even when it fails, tends to leave something behind: insight, skill, clarity. Compulsion, when it fails, tends to leave only the echo of itself, a hunger for another loop. The architecture of sustainable motivation, then, is not about eliminating wanting. It is about the relationship between your wanting and your values. Ask yourself, are the things I'm pursuing daily, the goals, the metrics, the approval I'm seeking, are they pointing toward what I actually believe matters? Or have they accumulated like furniture accumulates because they were available and seemed reasonable at the time? This is not a question about productivity. It is a question about integrity, about whether the internal system running your behavior is running toward the life you actually want or simply running. There is a difference, and learning to feel that difference, not just to analyze it, but to sense it in your body, in the texture of your days, is one of the most important skills you can develop. Everything we've covered in this volume points towards a single practical challenge. How do you live with a brain that is built to want in a world designed to exploit that wanting without losing the thread back to what actually matters? There is no 3-step fix. Anyone who offers you one is selling you another loop. But there are practices, genuine, sustainable practices that slowly shift the relationship between you and your motivation system. The first is awareness without judgment. You cannot change what you cannot see, and you cannot see clearly when you're in the middle of shaming yourself for being human. The anticipation loops, the misalignments, the compulsive checks, these are not moral failures. They are patterns. Patterns can be recognized. Recognized patterns lose some of their automatic power. The second is deliberate friction. Loops thrive on ease. They run because they've been worn smooth with repetition. One of the simplest interventions is to introduce a small pause, a 3-second gap between the impulse and the action. Not to stop yourself, not to judge yourself, just to create the tiny space in which a choice can live. That pause is where agency starts. The third is values anchoring, the practice of regularly, explicitly connecting your daily pursuits to something you actually believe in. Not a vague aspiration, a specific, felt conviction. When you know why something matters to you, not in theory, but in your chest, the motivation system has something real to organize around.
This exercise takes about 10 minutes and is best done with a pen and paper. Step 1. Write the names of 3 things you're actively pursuing right now. Goals, habits, relationships, projects. Step 2. For each one, write a single honest sentence that completes this phrase. I'm pursuing this because, and don't write the answer you'd give in a job interview. Write the real one. Step 3. Look at what you've written. Ask yourself, if I stripped away what other people would think of this pursuit, if no one would ever know I succeeded or failed, would I still be doing it? The answers won't always be comfortable. That's the point. Note on this exercise, it's not designed to tell you that everything you want is wrong. Many things people pursue for mixed reasons are still genuinely worth pursuing. The exercise is about honesty, not renunciation. You are allowed to want things for impure reasons. You are allowed to be motivated by pride, by fear, by the desire to be seen. The goal isn't to be a motivation saint. The goal is to know what's actually driving you, so that you are the one making the call, not the loop.
I want deliberately. I choose what drives me. Write it down. Say it once in the morning before you pick up your phone, not as a command to yourself, but as a reminder of what's possible, because it is possible. The system that generates your wanting is powerful, but it is not sovereign. You are not just a vessel for dopamine predictions. You are the one who can step back, look at the loop, and decide, with genuine freedom, not performance, what to do next. That is not a small thing. That, in fact, is everything.
Here's what I want you to carry from this volume. You are not broken for wanting. You are not weak for checking the phone again, for feeling that flatness after the win, for noticing that the goal you worked toward for 2 years has already been replaced by the next one before the ink is dry on your achievement. That is not a character flaw. That is what it is to have a human brain in a world that was not designed for your flourishing. But knowing this changes something. When you understand that the anticipation is the engine, that the wanting is the system doing its job, not a signal that something is missing from you, you can begin to hold it differently. Not suppress it, not fight it. Hold it. The way you hold something valuable that you also know can be dangerous if you let it run your life. The motivation system is ancient. It was built for a world that no longer exists, and it's been retrofitted by a commercial ecosystem specifically optimized to keep it firing indefinitely. You are not competing against yourself when you feel the pull of the loop. You are navigating a genuine tension between what you were built to do and what you are trying to become. That tension is not a problem to be solved. It is the human condition.
What changes, what can change, with practice, with patience, with honest attention, is your relationship to the tension. Whether you are carried by it or whether you can stand beside it and choose. Not every day, not perfectly, but more often and more consciously. The goal is not to stop wanting. The goal is to want in ways that, at the end of the day, at the end of your days, you can actually claim as your own. There is a version of your life where the wanting serves you, where the anticipation engine is pointed at things that genuinely matter to you, where the pursuit and the meaning are, if not perfectly aligned, at least in honest conversation with each other. That version is not a fantasy. It is a practice. It starts with noticing, then naming, then slowly, imperfectly, humanly, choosing.
The next time you feel that hum, that low electric pull towards something you're not sure you actually need, pause, just for 3 seconds. And in those 3 seconds, feel the wanting. Not to judge it, not to stop it, just to see it clearly, the way you see something beautiful that you also know might disappear. Because that moment, that 3-second gap between impulse and action is where you live. That is where agency is made. Not in grand decisions, not in dramatic transformations, but in the small, repeated choice to be present to your own wanting before you let it lead you somewhere you didn't choose to go. Step into that gap. Stand in the morning light of what you actually want and let it warm your face, really warm it, before you decide what to chase.